base layer for women in the 18th century was a shift, which also doubled as a nightgown. Most shifts were made of linen, but woolen shifts were not unheard of in cold weather. The shift was cut economically from rectangles and triangles in order to waste as little fabric as possible. In order to achieve a fashionable silhouette underneath a cap, it was important that the hair be pinned in a high bun. This style also helps keep the hair out of the way during chores and work. Next come the stockings. For extra insulation and warmth, a pair of thin silk stockings was worn underneath a pair of heavier wool stockings. These are secured with ribbon garters just beneath the knee, where the calf muscles dip inwards, which prevents them from slipping down the leg. Over the stockings, a pair of sturdy leather shoes are worn. These shoes close with buckles that pierce through the leather latchets across the foot. Next, an underpetticoat of Virginia cloth or blended wool and cotton is worn over the shift. Underpetticoats could be made from many different materials depending on what fabric was available and practical for the climate. Over the underpetticoat are worn the stays. These stays lace down the back, so the most practical way to put them on is to shimmy into them partially laced. With the stays on backwards, the lacing is drawn through as many eyelets as possible before the stays are once again twisted around. Once the stays are facing forwards, the lacing is completed and tightened. Well-fitting stays aren't uncomfortable or restrictive, but rather provide support to the bust while giving the wearer a fashionable silhouette. The next garment to be worn is a pocket. 18th century pockets were essentially small bags suspended on a piece of ribbon or tape that tied around the waist. The petticoats had slits in the side through which the pocket could be accessed. Speaking of petticoats, those are donned next. For extra warmth, a heavier wool petticoat is added first, and then a lighter wool petticoat in a fashionably bright color. Quilted petticoats were also commonly worn for extra warmth in the winter, either as insulation or as a top petticoat to show off the intricate quilting that these garments often exhibited. Next, a cotton neckerchief is worn over the shoulders and chest for warmth and to protect the skin on sunny days. 18th century neckerchiefs were large squares of fabric that could be folded into triangles, often in brightly printed cotton imported from India. For extra warmth, a second neckerchief is layered over the first. An apron in blue and white checked linen is tied around the waist, securing the ends of the neckerchief. The apron also serves to keep the petticoat clean, and it can be used to help carry items that don't fit in the pocket. Next comes a gown in warm green wool. This style of dress is called an English gown or a nightgown, but it was not worn to sleep. The English gown could be pinned over a triangular piece of fabric called a stomacher, or the center could be filled in with a neckerchief, like it is here. Gowns like this, with pleated backs and fronts that pinned over a stomacher, were beginning to go out of style by the 1770s, but were still commonly worn by older women and by working women. This particular gown has lacing strips to make it easier to secure to the body, and the robings, or strips of fabric that extend from the shoulders, are pinned to the front edges of the bodice, creating a fashionable silhouette. A cap is worn over the hair to help keep it clean and out of the way. Silk ribbons were often worn around the cap as decorations, secured in place with a pin or two to prevent the fine ribbon from falling off. For winter wear, a kerchief could be worn over the cap and tied around the neck to protect the ears from cold and to add an extra layer of warmth to the head and neck. A bonnet or hat was fashionable to wear over the cap to protect the eyes from the sun. Bonnets were commonly made of black silk, but other colors were not unheard of, such as this green silk bonnet. Woolen mitts helped keep the forearms warm in a period when most fashionable sleeves ended around the elbow. These mitts do not restrict the fingers, allowing fine work to be done while keeping most of the arm nice and toasty. Last but not least, a red wool cloak is worn. Red cloaks were extremely popular in the 18th century and were worn by all social classes. This one is made of a cozy red wool plush. There are some illustrations of women with their outer petticoats and dresses flipped over their hat, presumably in the place of an umbrella. I tried this, and I cannot say that I recommend it, especially if one does so after having soaked one's hem in snow. It left my legs cold and got more snow on my upper body than otherwise would have been the case. It also looks pretty ridiculous. Thank you to Ollie for their help in filming and editing this video, and thank you to you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.